The Go Higher podcast is provided by the High Program at Wayne State University. The High Program, helping individuals go higher.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Go High podcast, where we take on tough and relevant subjects in everyone's lives and provide insight on how to respond, resolve, and re-inspire yourself and those around you. Exams are one of the most difficult academic experiences for students across the globe. Whether it's testing your knowledge of a few chapters, a midterm, or a comprehensive final, it's impossible to go into or come out of an exam without worrying about your grade. If you're wondering how your peers seem to get such good grades on exams that they were so sure they were going to fail, or if you feel like you're giving it your all and still receiving poor grades, this episode is for you. We're going to start with the worst of the worst. Cumulative final exams, the single most terrifying exam you take in college. In general, the best way to prepare is to stay on top of reading and assignments. Attend class and take comprehensive notes, reviewing concepts that you're struggling to grasp. If you've been to see your professor and read the same passage in the book over and over, it's time to hit the internet. Find a reputable website that examines the basics and then move on to more complicated aspects of the concept. Take notes from sources outside of the textbook and keep them in safe spots for when it's time to study for finals. Throughout the semester, you can even make a list of concepts to review that were more difficult to understand so that when studying for finals comes around, you're not sitting in a haze of notes, frantically bouncing from one topic to the next. You can even make a list of concepts to review that were more difficult to understand so that when studying for finals comes around, you're not sitting in a haze of notes, frantically bouncing from one topic to the next. So now that you've got notes together on the concepts that gave you trouble, where do you go next? Some people might think that the best thing to do is to start from the beginning of the semester and study through your notes to the end of the semester. But if you want to make sure you really know the material, you're going to want to be able to make connections from one topic to another, regardless of the order in which you've learned them. You can organize material according to a concept map. Make the concept map with as many connections as possible, indicating the connections between the lines which connect the concepts. If you make the concept map through the semester, you'll have a greater amount of detailed material to pull from than if you were to make it at the end of the semester after you've been bombarded with hordes of information. This will help you make connections between topics across the semester and to help to increase your understanding of how the material works within itself. I should mention that in order for this method to produce a grade of an A, it does take a bit of time, and it is founded on the notion that you've studied throughout the semester or have grasped the course material well enough throughout the semester that you haven't earned anything less than a B on a test. For either of these situations, I would definitely advise you to start studying in the calm before the storm, the point in between your second and last exam, right before all of the last assignments, projects, and papers are being handed out by professors. Now that we've gotten through cumulative final exams, let's move on to midterms and finals that focus on the second half of the course. Although one significant difference between the two is the amount of points that they're worth. The advice given in this part of the podcast will be split between the two exams since they occur at different points in the semester. Despite the fact that midterms are nerve-wracking, they're a bit easier to prepare for than any sort of final exam. If the midterm is the first official grade for the course, it is expected that you'll be a bit more than nervous, but that nervous energy can easily be channeled into motivation to prove to yourself and anyone else invested in your education that you can memorize and regurgitate new concepts and ideas with a high level of accuracy. Since midterms are based on the first half of the semester, the content tends to be easier relative to the second half of the semester, making it easier to discern concepts you should be familiar with versus those you should have memorized. The relative ease of the midterm to that of a final and the wealth of motivation that you have going into it are both great things, but if you don't have a plan to work through and study material, you'll feel like you're walking into a slaughter on test day. The best and most basic things you can do are combine textbook notes with lecture notes, highlight or noting any topics your instructor spoke on during lecture. Use the internet, your instructor, and or course-specific tutor to break down and understand difficult topics. If you hate taking notes, create a study guide or quiz on each chapter of the textbook so you have a way to test yourself before the midterm. One thing most students make the mistake of doing is studying for a midterm is spending most of their time reviewing the information their instructor emphasized. While it is a good thing to have the emphasized information committed to memory, it is also a good idea to be familiar with relevant content, as most instructors tend to sneak in a few questions on the exam that are related to information that wasn't emphasized during the lecture. Most of the information I just gave you about how to study for a midterm can be applied to a final that focuses on the second half of the semester. But there are a couple of methods you can use to make the most of your study time. If you manage to keep up with assigned reading and notes, you're going to want to start studying by breaking down complicated topics into similar pockets of information. It may be helpful to review the basic you learned at the beginning of the course or pull out the concept map you've been putting together as the semester flew by. If you've fallen behind on reading and notes, use your instructor's or a classmate's lecture notes to guide your reading, paying careful attention to relevant information that wasn't mentioned during lecture. Whatever type of exam you're taking, you're going to want to plan an appropriate amount of time to study outside of the classroom. Usually, the rule of thumb is study 3 hours for every hour that you're in class. As terrifying as that sounds, you can adjust your study schedule according to a variety of factors. The difficulty that you have with the course, upcoming assignments, projects, or tests. If you're under a lot of stress, you can even plan out how much you want to study in relation to how important the class is to your major. Whenever you do start studying, you're going to want to make sure that you've started far enough in advance of the test to where you don't feel rushed by assignments for other classes. 2 weeks in advance is a good amount of time to get yourself familiar with exam content from earlier in the semester and catch up to the most recent information. Obviously, you'll want to change the hours you've devoted to studying in relation to how close the exam date is, starting out slow and increasing the amount of time spent studying gradually. Exams are quite possibly the worst part of college, besides the identity crisis we all go through as we age into our 20s. Despite the fact the cumulative finals, midterms, and second semester finals are worth different amounts of points and cover different aspects of information. They're all still nerve-wracking and they're all still exams, which makes information on preparing for them fairly similar. In summary, the best advice sums up to 4 points. 1. Keep up with assignments, readings, and lectures. 2. Regularly review the notes from the textbook and lecture. Make note of any shared topics. 3. Create a study guide or concept map to help condense information and make it easier to see how everything is connected. 4. Tackle the difficult topics with the internet, your instructor, and or a course-specific tutor.
College can be difficult, but for some students, financial issues can make things impossible. The HIGH program at Wayne State University provides critical funds to students who are having major issues with basic needs like tuition, books, housing, and food. It's amazing, but just a few $100s at the right time can save a student from dropping out or from being homeless. Students should not have to decide between basic life needs and finishing their education. The HIGH program has connected hundreds of students with these basic needs and provided a light at the end of the tunnel for what amounts to the most difficult period of their young lives. If you would like to help, donations of any amount are welcome, and you can find all our information on highprogram.wayne.edu or at WSU High Program.